Actually, can you? Oh, never mind.
What?
Sorry, I just know my cats are just sort of looking at me like they want me to feed them.
Sorry, too
Yeah.
late. Hi and welcome. I'm Sue Phillips. I am the director of the Science Fiction Literature track at DragonCon Goes Virtual. This is music for writers, which may not be what it sounds like. We're going to talk to our panelists about what they listen to when they write, why they listen to it, and if it affects the writing in any way. I'm going to let the two gentlemen introduce themselves. Keith?
Hi, I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido. I've written a whole lot of fiction over the past, I don't know, 25-ish years. Time has lost all meaning. And I've written about 50 novels, about close to 100 short stories, a bunch of comic books and nonfiction. I'm also a musician as well. I'm a percussionist. I've played with a band called the Don't Quit Your Day Job Players back in the 90s, and currently with the parody band, the Boogie Nights. And I played with some other people as well. Music has always been a big part of my life. And I've written a series of urban fantasy stories set in Key West, Florida, which, first of which appeared in Tales from the House Band, so you can get an idea how that relates to the panel. And one of the main sets of characters is an actual rock band in Key West, a cover band in a bar in Key West. So I loves me some music. So.
Darren?
And I'm Darren Kennedy. I write paranormal thrillers and contemporary fantasy. One of my series called Fugue and Fable, it's based on all the works of the various Russian composers you've heard of. The first book is all based on Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. The second book, this is the original cover from my old publisher, was The Firebird, Petrushka, and The Rite of Spring, which are all of Stravinsky's ballets. And the third one takes you through Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, The Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, by way of a little bit of Rachmaninoff and a little bit of a few other Russian composers to sort of finish out the series. My other series is based on the game of chess, and I'll talk about some of my musical inspirations for that as well. And I've been a musician off and on through my life. I played trumpet pretty much all through high school and college, and either the marching band or the symphonic band or the pep band, and I've been to more sporting events, and I can still play the Wake Forest fight song from memory from a dead sleep if you threw a trumpet at me. I play a little guitar, though I'm not particularly good. I like to sing karaoke, but I don't get to do that very much during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I was actually in an a cappella singing group during medical school called The Ultrasounds. No lie.
Oh!
True story.
Okay. I'm just a music fan. I'm not a writer, but I'm here to, be a buffer if necessary between these two guys, but I don't think it'll be necessary.
Me and Keith put everything behind us back in 2018.
Right.
And before, no, we won't get into that.
Just a little joke.
Yes.
All right. Keith, why don't you tell us about your Ragnarok and Roll and other musical story?
The short stories, the Key West short stories that the first one, like I said, was in Tales from the House Band. A bunch of them were collected in here, and I'm almost got enough stories for a second collection. I'm not quite there, but not all the stories involve music, but a lot of them do. The stories take place on the island of Key West. Among these supporting characters are several Norse gods, the ghost of a wrecker captain, an immortal barfly, and a bunch of other weird people. So the main character spends a lot of time hanging out in Mayor Fred's saloon, which is a stand-in for Captain Tony's saloon on Green Street in Old Town in Key West, and the house band, which is called 1812. And they, like all the bands on Key West, they're a rock and roll cover band. And the stuff involving the band makes up the texture of some of the stories. Like one of them involved Robert Johnson, who famously made a deal with the devil, and the story involves how that changed over the course of the years, and how it affects 1812. Now, I did one story for an anthology called Out of Tune, where all the stories were based on old ballads, and I chose the Mermaid Ballad. And that was the basis for a story that involved not just mermaids, but also Loki and something stupid he did once in the past. I know, hard to believe Loki did something stupid, but
That never happens.
no. And some others as well. And there's one story in particular that opens with a character who in the previous story had broken her leg. And this is her first time on stage. This is the guitarist and one of the lead singers. And I just described the beginning of their concert, and it was so much fun to describe. It's a real challenge, and I'm sure Darren can speak to this too, trying to describe music in prose. And it's not always easy. And one of the things I tried to do was capture the emotional effect that good music can have on you. And how and to describe how the sounds work and how the musicians are in sync with each other and the resonances and the harmonies and how everything can just come together nicely or not to come together nicely. There's one bit in one story where the band is sort of out of sync, and describing that as part of it too. So it's fun. I enjoy writing about music. I've been listening to music my whole life. I've been playing music since college. Well, sooner than that, really. I learned how to play the recorder when I was a little kid, and I was in a bunch of musicals as a kid too. So and music has always been. I've always got music playing with when I'm writing or when I'm sitting at the computer or when I'm showering. I used to keep a boombox in the bathroom all the time with that would play tapes or CDs. And now I can just like play MP3s on my phone because the speakers are good. I love technology. And, it's fun. It's fun to write about music, and it is a challenge because it's audio medium and you're trying to describe it in words where you can't use sound. So.
Darren?
Pretty much everything Keith said. I really very much enjoyed. So basically what happened with me was I was working on my chess series and I had finished the first book and got about halfway through the second book. And I was listening to a lot of Pictures in an Exhibition and Scheherazade and a lot of Russian classical music. And I made the mistake of flipping the CD case over one time and seeing the various movement names of Pictures in an Exhibition and said, oh, look, a number and the words after it. Those look like chapter titles. This led to me writing 3 books based on every Russian piece of classical music I'd ever heard and some that I hadn't heard yet that I really enjoy now. And the interesting thing was the first book and the second and third book, I had to write the second 2 a little bit different because the second and third book are all based on the ballets. And so I was able to incorporate a lot of the stories of those various ballets and do the music that went with them as well. But Pictures at an Exhibition and Scheherazade, they don't necessarily, that's the 2 pieces from the first book. They don't really have any accompanying story other than some very creative titling. And so I had to sort of generate what would that song be about, because they were all based on original paintings. And so I incorporated what was in the original painting and then what does the music sound like. But like the first piece of music is the gnome. So I had to create who is the gnome. And the second one is the old castle. But in the original painting, there is a very tiny troubadour, a musician playing. So I had to create who is the troubadour. And then for each painting, I had to create a character for the painting. And then I would sit and just listen to each segment sort of obsessively with the headphones on. And I would usually, when I was writing a particular part, I would put that one on repeat in an effort to try to, like, through osmosis, make it appear on the screen. I would watch a lot of YouTube videos of various symphonies playing this so that when I said, all of a sudden a French horn did this thing, that I'm not having it be a bassoon and have some professional musician tell me I'm an idiot. And so that was fun. And then when I wrote the second and third book, if you told me that I would spend hours at a time watching ballet at Starbucks and then banging on a keyboard, I would have told you a few years ago that you were nuts. But that's what I ended up doing. I've seen Swan Lake in more times, in more different incarnations than you can possibly imagine.
Cool.
You know, it's funny. I've gotten to the point where, like, I'll listen to a song because I've been writing so many stories with 1812. Like, I'll listen to a song and I'll try to think of how they would arrange it, and which of, because there's 4 people in the band and they all sing. Because I always love bands like the Beatles, like the band, where there's more than one lead singer depending on what the needs of the song are, which really adds to the texture of the music. And so I always, like, I'll listen to a song and think, okay, would Chet be singing this one or would Bobby sing this one? And just, trying to arrange it, because and it's also because there's only 4 of them. There are some songs where the arrangement would be different because they don't have the same instrumentation necessarily.
What did you say about 1812? Tell me about that.
I'm sorry?
What was the 1812?
That's the name of the band in the Key West stories. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that part, because that's Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture.
Yes. That's why they call themselves that.
And that's the grand finale of my Tchaikovsky finale. Is the main character says, and I think the exact line was, "And yes, I skipped right to the end because I need the artillery."
I like that. So, do you guys listen to any music when you're writing non-musical fiction? That is fiction that doesn't involve music. And what do you like to listen to?
Keith?
Keith?
I'm always listening to music, no matter what I'm doing, practically, and including when I write. I discovered in around 2002, 2003, that for whatever reason, the music that I write best to is Jethro Tull and Tom Waits. I don't know why this is. I love Jethro Tull and Tom Waits, thank goodness, because Jethro Tull's probably my favorite musical act, and I love, and I don't know what it is. For some reason, those two in particular, and I've got a writing playlist that I will use if I'm getting particularly stuck on something. But generally, I listen to an extended playlist that's mostly like rock and roll music with a lot of folk and some blues, mostly classic rock type stuff. I freely admit that my knowledge of music that was made after 1990 is scattershot, but not completely non-existent. And there's some wonderful stuff that I listen to constantly now that is more recent vintage than that. In particular, I've been on a big Rhiannon Giddens kick lately. She's amazing. But overall, it's basically that, so the blues, rock, and folk of various sorts. A lot of Arlo Guthrie too, and Simon and Garfunkel, and Paul Simon by himself, and the band, and others. and it's funny, a lot of the more recent music that I am familiar with are by acts who go back further, like Mark Knopfler. Dire Straits is another one of my favorite bands, and I've continued to follow Mark Knopfler's solo career, and he's continued to release things, over the years as well, and I've gobbled them up, and some other ones as well. Jethro Tull has continued to release some stuff, and Ian Anderson's done some stuff by himself. So,
Darren?
When I'm actually writing, I tend to need to have things that don't have words, because the words, I think there's a song that says the words get in the way, if I remember that song from the 80s correctly, and the words would definitely get in the way of me putting words on the screen, because I'll just start singing along, especially with a lot of my favorite stuff. So I have sort of my my pre-writing music, which can be a little bit more rock, and it can put me into the whatever mood I need to be. I tend to like a lot of the stuff that Jim Steinman wrote, whether it comes out of the mouth of Bonnie Tyler or Meatloaf or something like that. He wrote so many different songs, wrote the one good Celine Dion song. There's actually probably more than one, but so I can listen to that ahead of time. If I need to write a fight scene, Holding Out for a Hero, which is Jim Steinman through Bonnie Tyler, is one of my favorite ones, because if that doesn't get your blood pumping, you're probably in need of medical assistance. And then whenever I am doing something, when I am actually doing the writing, I tend to listen to something that's more symphonic, and music that I've loved since literally 1981 is the original Raiders of the Lost Ark soundtrack. And a lot of times when we would still have our writers group, we would all be sitting around the table at the local coffee shop, and I would just put the headphones on and start with, track one of, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and just go all the way through. And when I need to write a fight scene, I just go up to, it's a song called Desert Chase, which is on the second side. And that's the one where Indiana Jones and these people are doing kind of round robin around that truck. Somebody's always on the ground and somebody's always driving the truck. That song is great to write to. Pretty much anything by John Williams is good to write to. I mean, be it Star Wars, Superman, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws, any of that stuff is good. And you can find the piece of music that fits your mood. So I would say words before words and no words during words would be my rule for that one.
I know, it's funny, I know lots of writers who feel the same way Darren does about writing to anything that has lyrics, and that always interests me because I never have had that problem. I mean, I totally get, I understand how that works. I'm just lucky in that it doesn't happen to me. One of my best friends is David Mack, who's written a lot of Star Trek novels and just finished an alternate history fantasy trilogy called the Dark Arts trilogy, and he always writes specifically to movie soundtracks. But which movie soundtrack he picks depends on what he's writing, and even on what scene he's writing. It's always a movie. It's always from a film and a part of the film that is appropriate to whatever scene he's writing. Yeah. When he's like a lot of like when he's written Star Trek novels that have big space battles in them, he will often listen to the soundtrack from a submarine movie or a war movie, or that sort of.
Makes sense. Yeah.
A good one to listen to is the Planets by Gustav Holst, which is what a lot of that music ended up being sort of co-opted into the original Star Wars soundtracks. Like, if you ever want to hear something really interesting, play the first 2 minutes of Mars Bringer of War, and then listen to the first 2 minutes of Star Wars, and you're going to go, oh, I see where that came from now. And then listen to Leia's theme and listen to Venus, and they'll be like, oh, I see where that came from. But yeah, just putting on the original is awesome. Nothing will get your blood pumping like Mars Bringer of War.
Yeah.
Well, the title alone.
Just the title alone.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites from that. But so, well, we obviously music plays a large part in your. How does it play a part in your life outside of writing?
Well, like I said, I am a musician.
Yeah.
I don't get to play nearly as often as I'd like to. As you know, Sue, because you were there pretty much for the entire duration of the band.
I have the CDs.
Yes. As I said at the beginning, I was part of a group called the Don't Quit Your Day Job Players, most of whom were people in the science fiction community. The late David Honingsberg, who was a writer and a game designer, and Alexandra Elizabeth Honingsberg, who's also a writer, and Peter J. Heck, who's an author and an editor in the field, and then a couple of people who were just fans, Stephen Rosenhaus, Rick Cleary, and Tom Labenthal. And we all played, initially we started out just doing jam sessions at science fiction conventions, and it sort of mutated into an actual band, and we did gigs in New York City clubs and state and county fairs. Plus, a lot of conventions had us as guests as well, including DragonCon, actually. The first DragonCon I ever went to was in 1998, where we were invited to be one of the musical guests that year. And it was great. And one could argue that music got me started as a person who went to DragonCon. But, and for that matter, my current band, the Boogie Nights, we have played DragonCon in the past. We haven't in recent times, just because it's the expense and the travel. There are 7 of us in the band, and it was too chaotic to organize. And we're not famous enough to have anybody pay our way or reserve things for us. So it was more trouble than it was worth to come back for the band to come back to DragonCon, unfortunately. But I love performing, and I love making music, and I love listening to music. Like I said, there's always music happening when I'm sitting at the computer, when I'm driving, when I'm taking a shower, when I'm writing, when I'm doing pretty much anything except for watching television, then I'm usually listening to music. I like having a soundtrack, and there are moments. There are certain moments where you just remember as like one of those perfect moments in your life, and several of those are associated with music. One in particular, I remember it's like one of the most perfect moments that I recall was I'm driving up the FDR Drive in New York City. It is a beautiful, bright, sunny day. The sunlight is glinting off the skyscrapers. It's not a cloud in the sky. I've got the window rolled down, the breeze is blowing, and Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill comes on the radio.
Oh, nice.
Mm.
And I just, that was one of those perfect moments where everything was just awesome, you know. And I love that song anyway, and I love it even more since then. And this is going back. This is when I was in college, so this was in the late '80s. This moment because that car that was my first car. It was a 1977 Ford Pinto, powder blue. Went from 0 to 60 in 2 hours, but it was wonderful. It was joyous, and there's a lot of moments like that where you know, music. Hell, all my trips to Key West, one of the reasons why my Key West stories have a band as part of it is that's a big part of the texture of Key West. Also New Orleans. Those are two wonderful places where you can just walk up and down Bourbon Street or Duval Street and just hear all kinds of different types of music and different people playing and different interpretations of songs. And if you're in Key West, probably 843 different versions of Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl. Seriously, you can't go 24 hours without hearing that song at least twice in Key West. But it's wonderful, and it adds to the joy and the celebration of those two cities in particular.
Darren, any thoughts?
I love music as well. It's very rare that I'm not listening to music when I'm doing pretty much anything. Like you said, from shower to anywhere I'm driving, I'm always got something playing. I alternate between a bunch of different on the XM radio, a bunch of different, like I'd like to live in the 80s now, and now I'd like to live in the 90s. Now I want to listen to some coffee shop acoustic. Now I want to listen to something current. And then just recently I had about 2 weeks where I was listening to like current pop, and sort of your thing about it, I don't know much music past 1990. I go up to about the mid 2000s and then I get a little bit lost. But when I listened to the pop station for like 2 weeks, I was like, I think there may be one music producer left in the entire world, because a lot of these songs do the same things. And I find myself missing some of the variety in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And
yeah, but honestly, if you listen to specifically a pop music station at any of those times, you probably would have heard the same thing over and over again too.
Right. This is true. It's just, I guess it's just sort of almost like, instead of like being immersed in it, I'm almost like an outside observer, and just kind of observing it. But some of it was still pretty good, and a lot of it was very catchy. I listen to things other than classical. I mean, I'm a big rock fan. I mean, I think for many years Rush was at the top, but I think the further I get along, my original love from when I was in 5th grade of Queen has come back to the top. I think Freddie literally has the crown pretty much for the rest of my life as my favorite act of all time. I will always regret, I still have the newspaper clipping when Freddie Mercury passed away in 1991 in my scrapbook over here from college, that I never got to see Freddie Mercury live. But I actually went to go see Queen with Adam Lambert a couple years ago, and it was as close as I will ever get to seeing like actual Queen from the 70s and 80s. And that was one of the most wonderful nights of my life, because I saw Brian May in all of his, now his hair it's the exact same hairstyle, but it's just shockingly white all the way down. And to see Brian May do Brian May, that was worth it. And then Adam Lambert is one heck of a performer. I could literally talk for hours about the stuff that I love. To go see Boston back in the early 90s and have the pipe organ literally shake the teeth out of your mouth, or go see, Yes, when they did their Union tour, and they had all the original Yes and all the new Yes, all 8 of them on stage together, and perform stuff
Wow.
that you never dreamed you would hear live, and watch them do these meticulous impossible to play songs perfectly right in front of you. I
have lost track of the number of times I have seen Bruce Springsteen Bruce Springsteen both with and without the E Street Band perform live. I saw him twice on the Born in the USA tour in '84 and then again in '85. And I've seen him consistently since then, and he never fails to put on an amazing show. Just every one of those concerts is just phenomenal music, phenomenal performing, just absolutely joyous. And even when he was getting up into his 50s and 60s, and he was still not quite as energetic as he was in his 20s and 30s, but still just a very tremendous high energy show. So yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about some of the shows I've been to over the years, all the different performances.
The band that I've seen the most, because my friends from college and med school, we were all big Rush fans, and I think that me and some combination of those people saw every tour at least twice, if not 3 times, from 1992 until they finally retired before Neil Peart, R.I.P., passed away a couple. Was it just last year? It just seems
last year, yeah, I think.
COVID-19 has caused all understanding of time in my head to completely go away. They said that I can't believe March was just 16 years ago.
Yeah. 2019 was a year ago, but April was 6 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
There was one time I've only seen Jethro Tull, like I said, is my favorite band, but I've only actually seen them in concert twice. But the first time I saw them was at Carnegie Hall in 2005.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
New York, and they had a wonderful violin player named Lucia Micarelli, who had joined them on the tour. And what I loved about that in particular, for years I always thought, I'm not even sure where this idea originally popped into my head, but there's a song that they did that was on their 1989 album, Crest of a Name, called Budapest, which is one of their best songs. And they do it live a lot. And I always, for some reason, had it in my head that it would sound really cool if you added violin to it. And then there's this violin player, and she did it with them, and it sounded even better than I thought it would. It blew me away how perfect that added to the song. You love moments like that. I got to see Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie also Carnegie Hall. Arlo always did, I don't know if he still does it, a Thanksgiving concert that weekend at Carnegie Hall. And there was one year that I saw it, and it was obviously before Pete Seeger died, of the two of them together, and just seeing the two of them with like various members of their family performing on stage was just amazing. There's something in particular about a live performance, that a good live performance anyway. I mean, you mentioned Queen. There are a few things on this earth that will ever compare to the performance they did at Live Aid in '85.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I still will plug that DVD. I have the DVD of the concert, and I still plug that one in just to watch the Dire Straits performance and the Queen performance. Those are like my 2 favorite moments of the concert.
Nobody moves
like
Freddie Mercury. Whenever he walks on a stage, even from the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, he did his best, but you could like be squinting and not be able to tell. Only one person knows how to move like Freddie Mercury moves.
Yeah.
And that's before he even opens his mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, there was a wonderful touch when the Muppets did their version of Bohemian Rhapsody that went viral on YouTube a bunch of years ago.
Yes, I saw it.
Yeah.
What I loved about, and I didn't notice this until a friend of mine who is probably the biggest Queen fan in the world, a friend of mine named Kim Kindia, who is a massive Queen fan. She noticed when that aired, the guitar that Janis is playing during the guitar solo is a left-handed version of Brian May's guitar. They actually matched the guitar that he plays on the song.
I never noticed
was left-handed because, of course, the Muppets are all left-handed. But that little attention to detail I thought was brilliant, and I love that anyway. I mean, that version of Bohemian Rhapsody was just amazing. It was the perfect tribute to Queen and the perfect Muppet thing.
Yeah.
So, something you should look up. There's a song off of Rush's Signals album called "Losing It" that is the one song they have that pretty much features a violin. And on one of their, I forget, it was one of the last 2 tours, they actually wanted to perform Losing It, but they had never done it live, or they hadn't done it in a gazillion years. And there was a man who earlier in his life, when he was a kid, wanted to learn to play violin so he could learn to play that song. And somehow he auditioned and got to be the violinist on stage to perform Losing It with Rush whenever he had learned it whenever he was a kid, because he loved it that much. And it's this video, and it's in black and white. It's like this really short documentary about just him and how his experience with that. And you're just kind of like, that's one of those dream comes true sort of documentary things. It was very, very cool. You should look it up sometime.
That sounds amazing. It's funny, I don't have the bone in my head that makes me love Rush. Several of my closest friends love Rush, and I appreciate Rush. I intellectually know that they're an excellent band. I never could get into them. And it's weird.
You don't.
They're probably the most science fictional band out there. Kevin Anderson put together that great at the 2112 anthology.
Right.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago. It's just, and I never could do it.
You either love them or you don't.
Thing called Playing for Change, that has been doing stuff, and there's a couple of them on YouTube, where they get together musicians from all over the world to play a song. Like someone will lay down like a bass track, and then they'll give the recording to someone, and just putting together different people doing parts of the song. I know they did The Wait, and a couple others, and it's just amazing. And it takes months and months to put all this together, but just it mixes in different instruments and different singing styles and different vocal styles, all on a particular well-known song. And it's wonderful. That's definitely something you should look up on YouTube. I love that sort of thing where people take a song and then reinterpret it in some way. One of the things I love about, in particular, certain acts and their live performances is that the music will evolve, or they'll do something different, some variation on the theme to make it more interesting, or, just to show their evolution as musicians since the song was first written. There's something to be said for recreating the original, but there's also something to be said for doing something different with it.
Yeah.
True.
True. Darren, I remember when I watched American Idol, I admit it, all the way through.
So did a lot of people.
And when Adam Lambert was on, I remember thinking that at the time, Freddie was still alive. I remember thinking if Queen ever needed to replace Freddie Mercury, Adam would be a great choice. And apparently he is. I've never seen him live, but
you and I had the exact same thought. I watched that season of American Idol too. That was and number one, when he first walked on the stage and sang something, I was like, he could do Freddie Mercury.
mm-hmm.
As close as you can. You can't do Freddie Mercury, but as close as you're going to get. And then later on in that season, if I remember, they actually had Queen on as guest judges. And I was like, this is so interesting because they're right there and he's right there. And there's no way this is not going to happen. And then like 2 or 3 years later, they're on tour together. And I was like, that's a match made in heaven. And I've seen the result. And whenever Adam Lambert walks out and literally like those Kiss boots that are like has a foot deep long sole and walks out and he's like in silver and comes up on the big head from the cover of News of the World. And I was like, this is wonderful. But I was right there with you seeing that season for sure.
Yeah. I was blown away by him, but he should have won.
Honestly, I'm kind of glad he wasn't, because then he would probably be contractually obligated to not go be the lead singer of Queen. I would much rather him be crowned queen than crowned king of American Idol. That's all I'll say.
I like that. Yes, I'm with you there, because you're probably right about that. If he had won that year,
he's phenomenal live. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Funny, the second time I saw Jethro Tull, Procol Harum opened for them.
Nice.
And it was really kind of funny because in both cases, the lead singer was the only member of the original lineup who's still there. Martin Barr was still part of Jethro Tull, but he actually wasn't part of the original lineup. He wasn't there for the first album. He came in later. and Ian Anderson is the only one of the original, and the lead singer Procol Harum, whose name I'm forgetting now, is also the only one left. And both of them are like, there is no way Jethro Tull could ever do a concert where they didn't play Aqualung and Locomotive Breath. It wouldn't.
Mhm.
And Procol Harum could never do a concert where they didn't do Whiter Shade of Pale. You know,
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
they, you know, in both cases it was the first encore. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
there's certain things, and you wonder. I mean, just speaking of somebody who performs, I mean, the band I'm in has a huge catalog of songs, so we could do 5 straight concerts and never repeat ourselves. But because the band, I've only been with the band since 2006, but the band itself has been around since 1982.
Oh, wow.
And so we've got it. I can't imagine, you know, playing the same song over and over again. And especially if it's something like Born to Run is for Bruce Springsteen, or like Aqualung and Locomotive Breath are for Jethro Tull, or you know, any number of other, you know, signature songs, you know, like Layla is for Eric Clapton, where it's hard to get away with not playing it.
Yeah.
But if you're playing it every freaking night, you know.
There's a great interview on one of the later Bare Naked Ladies albums where they're all sitting around talking, and they're reviewing this time that they had an interview where they got asked, what's your favorite Bare Naked Ladies song? And each one was trying to come up with something creative. And then finally one of the guys just goes, If I Had $1 Million. And they're like, do y'all realize how much that song has meant to us, and what would have happened if we had never recorded that song? We wouldn't be doing this right now.
Mhm.
And Ed, who's the lead guitarist, after they said, If I Had $1 Million, he goes, of course it is. And I was like, how brilliant is that? You know, you try to be like, what's my latest thing? And we're working really hard on it, but like the song that made you it's got to be near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
So I see both sides of that for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there are some, I mean, there are certain songs that we do with the Boogie Nights where I have yet to get tired of it, and I'm always requesting it. There's one song, we're a parody band, so everything is a riff on an existing song.
Sweet.
And there's this one song we do called House on Pooh Corner, which is done to the tune of House of the Rising Sun.
Nice.
And it's my absolute favorite song of ours, and I love playing it, and I've yet to get sick of it. It's just, it's delightful. Partly because it's House of the Rising Sun, you know. But and it's hilarious.
Have you heard the song that's going around YouTube where it's a fan of Weird Al Yankovic has done the lead song from Alexander Hamilton as a tribute to Weird Al Yankovic in the
I have not
style,
seen that, but now I must.
Oh,
style
yeah.
of Weird Al, and it's like I am something Alfred Yankovic, and you're just like, and I thought it was actually Weird Al, but it's not. It's a guy that did a tribute to Weird Al because he loves him so much, and I was like, what a cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's another one who puts on a great show. I mean,
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
I've seen him. He's
Yeah.
really great. Yeah. It was
I mean,
many
he
years
could
ago,
just
but
perform the songs, but he does it. He makes
yeah.
a whole big production out of it, and it makes it that much more fun.
Yeah.
He's brilliant.
So we're running out of time, I'm afraid. Can I get some final thoughts and let the people know where they can find your stuff or you online?
Sure. Darren Kennedy.
Darren?
I'm at darrenkennedy.com. Easy to find. All my books are on Amazon. The Mussorgsky Riddle, which is the first book of Fugue and Fable, actually tomorrow, which for today is September 4th, has a book bub starting tomorrow where the book 1 ebook will be 99 cents through, I think, through September 10th. So if you want to check out that first book, it's $1 on Amazon for ebook for the next week. So check it out.
I want to mention one other musical thing that I've done in another source that because I just remembered it. I wrote a Star Trek novel in 2009 called A Singular Destiny. And the main character in that is a teacher who also serves as a sort of freelance diplomat named Sonic Cran. And he's a musician as well. And one of the things I had him do is the novel takes place in the wake of a massive, big traumatic event that occurred in a trilogy that David Mack wrote called Destiny. And my book is sort of part of the recovery from that. And one of the things he does is he organizes a jam session on the ship that's ferrying him to his latest diplomatic mission. And one of the things I wanted to do there was the catharsis that music can bring about, and that, music to soothe the savage breast, as it were. And that was a very important theme in there. And I remember getting one particular, an email from a fan who thanked me for that, who really, in particular, I used a poem that Victor Jara wrote called Estadio Chile, which Pete Seeger put to music back in 1973, I think it was, which was which Victor Jara wrote during the fascist takeover of Chile back in the day, and just the power that music can have. And that was a really important thing to do. You can find me online at dekendero.net, my last name, which is there it is. Dekendero.net.
I cannot actually reach into Keith's box. Sorry. I was like,
That's okay. It's a primitive website right now. I'm in the process of working with somebody to make it a better website, but right now it's a nice little link dump. It links to my Facebook page, my Twitter feed, my Instagram account, my blog, my writing for Tor.com, where I've been writing about popular culture for the last 9 years, and also to my reading series. I've been doing since the apocalypse started this year. I have been doing a series of readings called Crad COVID Readings, where I've been reading my short fiction. There's new ones every week. I've been doing at least 3 a week lately. So do check that out and subscribe to the channel. It's a lot of fun. And all my books, like Darren's, all my books are available from all the usual online book dealers. The next one coming out will be To Hell and Regroup, which is a military science fiction novel that I wrote with David Sherman. It's the 3rd book in David's 18th Race trilogy. He asked me to help him finish it because he was having some health problems. And that'll be out soon from eSpec Books. At the end of the year, I've got a thriller coming out called Animal, which I wrote with Dr. Manish K. Batra, which is about a serial killer who targets people who harm animals. It's kind of Dexter if it had been created by PETA. Sometime in 2021, we will have the next Precinct book, which is my fantasy police procedural series. Phoenix Precinct will be out. And the 2nd book in the Adventures of Brom Gold, my urban fantasy series set here in New York City, which will be called Feet of Clay. And I've got short stories out in a bunch of anthologies, including Badass Moms and Pangea Book 3, and coming up soon, also from eSpec Book, Horns and Halos, which is about angels and demons.
Great. Thank you guys very much. Thank you guys very much. It was fun.
Yes, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And enjoy Dragon Con.
Yes, enjoy Dragon Con, everybody, and thanks for watching. And